All right. So this budget is coming into force in April 2022. We're going to be doing a live stream. We're going to be covering what's being announced. We're going to discuss it. This will last a little while. It is starting at 30:30, which is in 8 minutes, but it will usually go on for more than an hour. It usually lasts about an hour to 2 hours, somewhere in that space. I think the shortest ever was 45 minutes, and that was a very long time ago, although they have sometimes gone on for well over 2 hours. Hopefully it won't be one of those. To be fair, there isn't that much that people are expecting in this one, so I don't think it's going to be going on for that long. I am just watching the screen over here that we're going to cut to whenever that happens. So what's on the menu? We've got a few minutes to discuss. So the last budget happened in March last year, and we had income tax thresholds frozen. So we're not expecting any big movements on that unless they go and change their minds just 6 months later. I don't expect that is going to be happening. We have this national insurance increase that is coming in April, and we've got 1.25% increase on both the employer and the employee side, and that's already been announced. That's already coming in. I doubt that's going to move very much, but in 2023, this new increase in national insurance is going to be separated from national insurance. National insurance is going to go back to the same level as it is today, and this will be split into a new tax called the Health and Social Care Levy. And this is really critical because this is very, very similar to how national insurance was introduced in the first place. And at the moment, it is a very, very low tax. But at the beginning, we had income tax, and we had national insurance introduced, and then that sort of crept up. And this adding this third income tax. In essence, in the UK, we're now going to have 3 different income taxes, which add up to just the same thing. They all go into the same pot. It's not like they go to different accounts. You pay them in the same payment to the same place. It just makes things look lower and look cheaper. That's all it is. And they have slightly different structures as well, which theoretically benefit lower paid, although it doesn't really benefit lower paid because national insurance disproportionately affects lower paid compared to income tax. So anyway, that's what's going to be happening. After Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, goes and talks about the budget for an hour, 2 hours, however long it's going to be, we're going to have Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, respond, because Keir Starmer unfortunately has COVID, so he's not in Parliament. He's unable to do it, and it'll be interesting because we've got a relatively probably inexperienced in some ways person doing the response, and maybe there won't be as much sort of challenge provided, but she is the Shadow Chancellor, so on that side maybe she is going to be a little bit more clued up on and prepared than some of the previous ones we've seen. All right, announcements made so far. We've got 5 minutes to go. Announcements made so far. We have more money going to the NHS, 6 billion. So all of these have been announced over the last few weeks. I just jotted some notes. And then the Speaker has been really frustrated with Rishi Sunak, with Boris, because traditionally these should not be announced outside Parliament, especially ahead of the formal announcement. And they've just been leaking them. They've been doing interviews. They've been officially leaking, unofficially leaking these. And we see more and more of this coming through, which is not necessarily a very good thing. They're just liking to warn people. But these are not particularly exciting or particularly like game-changing things, which is why I don't think this budget is going to take very long. So we've got more money for the NHS, almost £6 billion. We have the national living wage. This one is exciting and quite interesting. £8.91 at the moment is going up to £9.50 in April. That is a massive increase. And it's quite difficult because we've already had several industries say that this is going to significantly affect their bottom line. This is going to affect how much money they have to charge for their products and services. You had the pubs coming out saying that that's going to add 30p to the price of a pint. And this is going to affect a lot of other things because, you know, like the delivery driver, the person, like a lot of people who work minimum wage are going to get a very, very large increase, which is good in many ways. It will affect prices though, and at the moment when we're going through this increased level of inflation, whether it's transitory or not, which we'll have to find out, this probably won't help if that inflation problem persists from now until April. Anyway, we have fuel duty that is expected to be frozen, which is good given what is happening with oil prices at the moment. And we have £500 million spent on family hubs for parents and children, and 6.9 billion, which is quite a lot, which has been designated for transport and infrastructure. This is like trains, trams, bus routes, a whole load of different stuff, cycle routes, from what they said, a lot of this is going to be designated to the regions. So especially, I think the north is going to be some of it given to the devolved parliaments. And this is quite big because up until this was leaked, I think it was yesterday before, I can't remember when it was only 1.5 billion that was set for this amount whenever it was last budget. So this is quite a big increase. 6.9 billion is quite a lot as proportion of the total UK budget. All right. Expected, we have changes to the universal credit. There's lots of rumours. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's the current taper that loses 63p per pound earned. We'll see if there's any changes to that. The Conservatives have been kind of saying they want to simplify all these things, and it'll be interesting to see, do they simplify, or are they going to be sort of reducing it under this guise of simplification? I'm still watching. We're not quite on Rishi Sunak yet. We're still on Prime Minister's questions at the moment, so it's still good. Probably about another 2 to 3 minutes to go of that. What else we got? Hospitality. VAT at the moment is at 12.5%. It went up to 12.5% at the beginning of this month in October. It was down to 5% because it was specifically reduced from 20 down to 5% for the hospitality industry because of COVID. It's now up at 12.5%, and it should be going back to 20. And I think it'll be interesting to see, are they going to keep it at that 12.5 in order to stimulate the industry, because it's still not quite fully back up to speed where it should be. But one interesting thing that I picked up on is apparently later on, Rishi Sunak and Boris have a photo op booked, and it will be at some kind of brewery somewhere. So it'd be interesting. Does that mean that the alcohol duty is going to be slashed? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's that big a thing, but maybe that's what it's pointing to. Or maybe it's just going to be something to do with hospitality again, although the brewery itself is not going to be benefiting from that tax. Next, we have corporation tax. That's the last one that we haven't actually had anything announced on. We haven't had any leaks, so this will be interesting. At the moment, we are at a 19% corporation tax, which is quite good, it's quite low. But the problem is that in 2023, this is increasing to 25%, which is still lower than some other European countries. But it is quite expensive because the UK already suffers from a whole host of things that are preventing innovative companies from setting up shop here. Obviously, Brexit hasn't helped. And this increase in corporation tax is probably not going to encourage people to choose to set up here if they can choose to set up wherever it is they want. Will that stick? Of course, they have to raise money from somewhere because of how much we've been spending on all the different Rishi programs over the last couple of years. But we'll have to wait and see. VAT, is the VAT outside hospitality sector going to stick? Are they going to increase? Are they going to do anything with it? They've already broken promises on that front before. Somebody in comments, hello, by the way, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm not going to read all the comments. Hopefully I'll read a few more. Oh, we're about to go. No, not yet. Okay. Hope they don't touch stocks and shares ISA. Yeah, this is another one that people are kind of concerned by, because obviously stocks and shares ISA allowance of £20,000 is extremely generous in the UK. Like, I am talking from someone who uses this allowance to the max and benefits greatly from it. But it is really, if you take the grand scheme of taxation, it is really quite unnecessary to allow people to invest £20,000 a year without any tax due whatsoever. It kind of seems like too good when they are tightening the screw in universal credits, tightening the screw on lots of other stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if they touch that at all or not. But I haven't really got much else. Has there been any updates? Not that I'm seeing, but let's see. No news coming through. We're still asking questions of Boris at the moment in Parliament, so still nothing. Let's see if we can. No, we're still answering questions. All right. What are your guys' opinions? What are you waiting for? I don't think we're going to be seeing anything on income tax. I I think it's unlikely because they've made this big move with corporation tax, so that's going to be affected. I think it's unlikely the national insurance is going to be changing. So we're probably going to be seeing a lot of spending programs announced, a lot of stuff to do with that, some further support for the hospitality industry. VAT is probably the one area where they might be making some kind of announcements or some kind of moves. It'll be interesting to see which way, because obviously they need to raise revenue somewhere. But are they going to be stimulating the economy? Because the problem we have is through this taxation regime, alongside with some other regulatory reasons, we are not necessarily helping ourselves as a country in attracting tech startups, attracting those companies that might go and begin paying tons of tax, directly, indirectly, whatever. So we see, all right, are we about to go? Let's see. One second.
It is my duty
know if you can't hear this.
to take the unusual step of saying a few words. As Chairman of Ways and Means, as the House knows, I chair and have responsibility for the House's proceedings on the budget. I share the concern of many members of this House about the apparent pre-briefing of budget material to the media.
That's what I was just referring to.
Announcements had been made in this House. I understand the Chancellor's position, and it's well understood that for a number of years, elements of the budget have been pre-briefed to the media in an embargoed basis to aid their coverage of it. But such pre-briefing, where the embargo makes clear that the material can be used only after the Chancellor has addressed this House, is rather different to what we have apparently experienced this year. That is the briefing to the media of details of the budget statement to be published before the statement is delivered. As Mr. Speaker has said, and all ministers know, important policy announcements should be made
I have a PD license and I'm providing commentary, critique and criticism of what we're watching.
There shouldn't be shouts of resign over there. That's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about courtesy to this House. Given my responsibilities to the House with regard to the budget, I must put on record my support for Mr. Speaker's stance on this issue and express a firm hope, which I believe is felt on all sides of the House, that we do not find ourselves in this position again at future budgets. But, Chancellor, we are all very much looking forward to hearing the remainder of your announcements, which you're about to make to us. I would like to know... Oh, no, you haven't. The Chancellor has still to give us the important parts of his budget.
Let's see.
Remind honourable members that copies of the budget resolutions will be available from the Vote Office and Members' Lobby after the Chancellor's statement and, of course, online. I also remind honourable members we will have good behaviour over this next hour or so.
Oh yeah,
Interventions
definitely going to happen.
taken during the Chancellor's statement, nor indeed during the replies on behalf of the opposition and the SNP. So we'll put aside all of those matters that we have just addressed and now concentrate. I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer to make his budget statement.
Wait! 4 minutes of planning off. That's a lot.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I've heard your words and those of Mr. Speaker. I have the greatest respect for you both, and I want to assure you that I have listened very carefully to what you have said. And may I also, Madam Deputy Speaker, send my best wishes to the Leader of the Opposition, and I know the whole House will join me in doing that. And now, with your permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me turn to today's budget. Madam Deputy Speaker, employment is up, investment is growing, public services are improving, the public finances are stabilising, and wages are rising.
Gee, somebody definitely lives in a different alternative reality.
Today's budget delivers a stronger economy for the British people, stronger growth with the UK recovering faster than our major competitors, stronger public finances with our debt under control, stronger employment with fewer people out of work and more people in work. Growth up, jobs up and debt down. Let there be no doubt.
Wait, debt
our
down?
plan is working.
What? The debt has increased
Madam
by the
Deputy
biggest
Speaker,
figure ever over the last 18 months.
This budget is about what this government is about. Investment in a more innovative, high-skilled economy, because that is the only sustainable path to individual prosperity. World-class public services, because these are the common goods from which we all benefit. Backing business, because our future cannot be built by government alone, but must come from the imagination and drive of our entrepreneurs. Help for working families with the cost of living, because we will always give people the support they need and the tools to build a better life for themselves. And levelling up, because for too long, far too long, the location of your birth has determined too much of your future, because the awesome power of opportunity shouldn't be available only to a wealthy few, but be the birthright of every child in an independent and prosperous United Kingdom.
And that's why we did Brexit and are increasing corporation
Today's budget
tax.
does not draw a line under COVID. We have challenging months ahead. And let me encourage everyone eligible to get their booster jabs as soon as possible. But today's budget does begin the work of preparing for a new economy post-COVID. The Prime Minister's economy of higher wages, higher skills and rising productivity, of strong public services, vibrant communities and safer streets, an economy fit for a new age of optimism, where the only limit to our potential is the effort we are prepared to put in and the sacrifices we are prepared to make. That is the stronger economy of the future, and this budget is the foundation.
I love how they're wearing masks
Madam
ministers
Deputy
behind.
Speaker,
They weren't wearing them
The
literally
House
2 minutes
will
ago.
recognise the challenging backdrop of rising inflation. Let me begin by carefully explaining what is happening in our economy and why. Inflation in September was 3.1% and is likely to rise further, with the OBR expecting CPI to average 4% over the next year. The majority of this rise in inflation can be explained by two global forces. First, as economies around the world reopen, demand for goods has increased more quickly than supply chains can meet. Having been shut down for almost a year, it takes time for factories to scale up production, for container ships to move goods to where demand is, for businesses to hire the people they need.
Who would have thought this
And
could
second,
happen?
global demand for energy has surged at a time when supplies have already been disrupted, putting a strain on prices. In the year to September, the global wholesale price of oil, coal and gas combined has more than doubled. The pressures caused by supply chains and energy prices will take months to ease. It would be irresponsible for anyone to pretend that we can solve this overnight. I am in regular communication with finance ministers around the world, and it's clear these are shared global problems.
The urgency
Neither
for these coming.
unique to the UK, nor possible for us to address on our own. But where the government can ease these pressures, we will act. To address the driver shortage, the Transport Secretary is introducing temporary visas, tackling testing backlogs, changing cabotage requirements, and is today announcing new funding to improve lorry park facilities.
I don't think the problem was with the lorry parks.
We've already suspended the HGV levy until August, and I can do more today, extending it for a further year until 2023 and freezing vehicle excise duty for heavy goods vehicles. To help with the cost of living, we've introduced a new £500 million household support fund, and today's budget will support working families further. And in terms of our fiscal policy, we are going to meet our commitments on public services and capital investment, but we are going to do so keeping in mind the need to control inflation. And finally, I have written to the Governor of the Bank of England today to reaffirm their remit to achieve low and stable inflation. And people should be reassured they have a strong track record in doing so. I understand people are concerned about global inflation, but they have a government here at home ready and willing to act. And Madam Deputy Speaker, in a period of global uncertainty, you need to work hard to maintain a strong economy and be responsible with the public finances, and that is what we are doing. I'm grateful to the OBR for their work, and I'm pleased to say they now expect our recovery to be quicker. Thanks to this government's actions, they forecast the economy to return to its pre-COVID level at the turn of the year, earlier than they thought in March.
We've had one announcement
Growth
about
this year
HGV
is
vehicle
revised
exercise
up
duty
from
so far.
4 to
Nothing.
6.5%. The OBR then expect the economy to grow by 6% in 2022 and 2.1%, 1.3% and 1.6% over the next 3 years. In July last year, at the height of the pandemic, unemployment was expected to peak at 12%. Today, the OBR expect unemployment to peak at just 5.2%.
The magic of part-time work
That
and zero-hours
means over
contract.
2 million fewer people out of work than previously feared. And wages are rising. Compared to February 2020, they have grown in real terms by almost 3.5%. And I can confirm for the House the OBR's forecast for business investment has been revised up over the next 5 years. And because of the actions we took to support our economy, we have been more successful than previously feared in preventing the long-term economic damage of COVID. The OBR have today revised down their scarring assumption from 3% to 2%. In the depths of the worst economic crisis on record, we set out a plan for jobs. A plan that was backed by business groups and trade bodies. A plan that has helped millions of people and saved millions of jobs. A plan that the OBR have today described as remarkably successful. Madam Deputy Speaker, today's forecast confirm beyond doubt our plan for jobs is working. And Madam Deputy Speaker, disruption in the global economy highlights the importance of strong public finances. Coronavirus left us with borrowing higher than at any time since the Second World War. As the Prime Minister reminded us in his conference speech, higher borrowing today is just higher interest rates and even higher taxes tomorrow. So we need to strengthen our public finances so that when the next crisis comes, we have the fiscal space to act. Today, I am publishing a new Charter for Budget Responsibility. The Charter sets out 2 fiscal rules which will keep this government on the path of discipline and responsibility. First, underlying public sector net debt, excluding the impact of the Bank of England, must, as a percentage of GDP, be falling. Second, in normal times, the state should only borrow to invest in our future growth and prosperity. Everyday spending must be paid through taxation. Both rules must be met by the 3rd year of every forecast period, giving us the flexibility to respond to crises while credibly keeping our public finances under control. These rules are supplemented by targets to spend up to 3% of GDP on capital investment and keep welfare spending on a sustainable path. Madam Deputy Speaker, the House will be asked to vote on our Charter, giving members a simple choice: to abandon our fiscal anchor and leave our economy adrift with reckless, unfunded pledges, or to vote for what we on this side of the House know is the right course: sound public finances and a stronger economy for the British people. Madam Deputy Speaker, important as the Charter is, our credibility comes as much from what we do as what we say. So I'm pleased to tell the House that because our plan is delivering a stronger economy And because we've taken tough but responsible decisions
Wow.
on public finances, the OBR report today that all our fiscal rules have been met.
We have ticked ourselves that we're doing a great job.
2% of GDP this year, then 85.4% of GDP in 22-23, before peaking at 85.7% in 23-24. It then falls in the final 3 years of the forecast from 85.1 to 83.3%. Borrowing as a percentage of GDP is forecast to fall in every single year, from 7.9% this year to 3.3% next, then 2.4, 1.7, 1.7, and 1.5% in the following years. Borrowing down, debt down, proving once again it is the Conservatives and only the Conservatives who can be trusted with taxpayers' money. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have made 4 fiscal judgments in this budget. First, we will meet our fiscal rules with a margin to protect ourselves against economic risks. That is the responsible decision at a time of increasing global economic
This is the ONS debt data,
when
if
our
anyone's
public
wondering.
finances are twice as sensitive
It's falling.
to
You can
changes
see
in
it falling
interest
over
rates
here.
as they were before the pandemic, and 6 times as sensitive as they were before the financial crisis. Just a 1 percentage point in inflation and interest rates would cost us around £23 billion. My second judgment today is to continue supporting working families. Third, as well as helping people at home, our improving fiscal situation means we will meet our obligations to the world's poorest. I told the House that when we met our fiscal tests, we would return to spending 0.7% of our national income on overseas aid. Some people said this was a trick or a device. I told this House it was no such thing, and based on the tests I set out, today's forecasts show that we are, in fact, scheduled to return to 0.7 in 24-25 before the end of this Parliament.
Definitely gonna happen.
And Madam Deputy Speaker, my fourth fiscal judgment is this. Today's budget increases total departmental spending over this Parliament by £150 billion. That's the largest increase this century, with spending growing by 3.8% a year in real terms. As a result of this spending review, and contrary to speculation, there will be a real terms rise in overall spending for every single department. And public sector net investment as a share of GDP will be at the highest sustained level for nearly half a century. If anybody still doubts it, today's budget confirms the Conservatives are the real party of public services. Madam Deputy Speaker, our stronger economy lays the foundation for everything we want to achieve in today's budget. World-class public services and more investment in our future growth. Before I turn to the details, I'd like to thank my right honourable friend, the Chief Secretary. Yeah. Completing the spending review in such challenging circumstances was a tall order, and thankfully we had just the man for the job. Madam Deputy Speaker, at the start of this Parliament, resource spending on healthcare was £133 billion. Today's spending review confirms that by the end of this Parliament, it will increase by £44 billion to over £177 billion. And the extra revenue we're forecast to raise from the Health and Social Care Levy is going direct to the NHS and social care as promised.
This is the increase to income
The health
tax.
capital budget
It's
will
just
be
got a
the
different name.
largest since 2010, record investment in health R&D, including better newborn screening, as campaigned for by the member for the cities of London and Westminster. 40 new hospitals, 70 hospital upgrades, more operating theatres to tackle the backlog, and 100 community diagnostic centres. All staffed by a bigger, better trained workforce with 50,000 more nurses and 50 million more primary care appointments. As well as funding to deliver the Prime Minister's historic reforms to social care, we're providing local government with new grant funding over the next 3 years of £4.8 billion, the largest increase in core funding for over a decade.
Yeah, this was one of the leaks.
In housing and home ownership too, with a multi-year housing settlement totalling nearly £24 billion. 11.5 billion to build up to the 180,000 new affordable homes, the largest cash investment in a decade, 20% larger than the previous programme. And we're investing an extra £1.8 billion, enough to bring 1,500 hectares of brownfield land into use, meet our commitment to invest £10 billion in new housing, and unlock 1 million new homes. We're also confirming £5 billion to remove unsafe cladding from the highest risk buildings, partly funded by the Residential Property Developers Tax, which I can confirm will be levied on developers with profits over £25 million at a rate of 4%. And we've also reduced rough sleeping by over a third, but we will go further, with £640 million a year for rough sleeping and homelessness, an 85% increase in funding compared to 2019. Madam Deputy Speaker, today's budget funds our ambition to recruit 20,000 new police officers, provides an extra £2.2 billion for courts, prisons and probation services, including £500 million to reduce the courts' backlog, pays for programmes to tackle neighbourhood crime, reoffending, county lines, violence against women and girls, victim services and improved responses to rape cases.
If you're just joining, you're not late. We haven't heard anything yet.
£3.8 billion to the largest prison building programme in a generation. Madam Deputy Speaker, all governments should aspire to provide greater life chances for future generations, but few governments can match our ambition. So let me now turn to what this budget does to support children. The evidence is compelling that the first 1,001 days of a child's life are the most important. My right honourable friend, the member for South Northamptonshire, has recognised this with her inspirational report. And we are responding today with £300 million for a Start for Life offer for families, high-quality parenting programmes, tailored services to help with perinatal mental health.
Are we going to get any numbers?
To tell the member for Congleton,
numbers would be good.
To create a network of family hubs around the country too. To improve the quality of childcare, we're going to pay providers more, with today's spending review providing an extra £170 million by 24-25. We're confirming £150 million to support training and development for the entire early years workforce, to help up to 300,000 more families facing multiple needs. We're investing an extra £200 million in the Supporting Families programme, and we will provide over £200 million a year to continue the holiday activity and food programme.
200 million for families is less than the 600 million, 500 million that was leaked.
Also delivers our commitment to schools with an extra £4.7 billion by 24-25, which, combined with the ambitious plans we announced at the spending review of 2019, will restore per pupil funding to 2010 levels in real terms, equivalent to a cash increase for every pupil of more than £1,500. And for children with special educational needs and disabilities, we are more than tripling the amount we invest to create 30,000 new school places. And we know that the pandemic caused
As the population grows, we'll
significant
need more school
disruption
places.
to children's
Surprising
learning. We've already announced £3.1 billion to help education recovery. Today, as promised by the Prime Minister and the Education Secretary, we will go further with just under £2 billion of new funding to help schools and colleges, bringing this government's total support for education recovery to almost £5 billion. Madam Deputy Speaker, as
One of the
we
better places to
level
spend
up
money.
Public services, we are also levelling up communities, restoring the pride people feel in the places they call home. To do that, we're providing £560 million for youth services, enough to fund up to 300 youth clubs across the country, over £200 million to build or transform 8,000 state-of-the-art community football pitches across the UK, funding to turn over 100 areas of derelict land into new pocket parks, and I'm allocating the first round of bids from the Levelling Up Fund. £1.7 billion to invest in the infrastructure of everyday life in over 100 local areas, with £170 million in Scotland, £120 million in Wales, and £50 million in Northern Ireland, more than their Barnet shares. This will benefit the whole United Kingdom.
It's 1.7 out of 6 that they promised. Let's see where the other ones are going to go.
Bury, Burnley, Lewes, Clwyd South, and not one, not two, but 3 successful projects for the great city of Stoke-on-Trent.
Oh, he knows so many cities in the UK. It's amazing.
But that's not all. We're also going to fund projects in Ashton-under-Lyne, South Leicester,
Oh, more cities.
Sunderland, Doncaster, and West Leeds.
You should do pub quizzes with that knowledge.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we are so committed to levelling up, we are even levelling up the opposition front bench. Madam Deputy Speaker, levelling up is also about protecting our unique culture and heritage. The British Museum, Tate Liverpool, the York Railway Museum, we're investing £800 million to protect museums, galleries, libraries and local culture. And thanks to the Culture Secretary, over 100 regional museums and libraries will be renovated, restored and revived. And she secured up to £2 million to start work on a new Beatles attraction on the Liverpool waterfront. We're also going to review our museum freedoms and make our creative tax reliefs more generous. On current plans, the tax relief for museums and galleries is due to end in March next year, just as exhibitions are starting to tour again. So I've decided to extend it for 2 years to March 2024. And to support theatres, orchestras, museums and galleries to recover from COVID, the tax reliefs for all those sectors from today until April 2023 will be doubled. And they won't return to the normal rate until April 2024. That's a tax relief for culture worth almost £250 million. And Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a budget for the whole United Kingdom. Through the Barnett formula, today's decisions increase Scottish Government funding in each year by an average of £4.6 billion. Welsh Government funding by £2.5 billion and £1.6 billion for the Northern Ireland Executive.
They have so much money to spend. Amazing. Economy must be doing well.
In real terms, the largest block grants for the devolved administration since the devolution settlements of 1998. The whole of the United Kingdom will benefit from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and over time we will ramp up funding so that total domestic UK-wide funding will match EU receipts, averaging around £1.5 billion a year. And we will fund projects across the UK, including funding for the Extreme E race in Scotland, the 22 Hebrides X-Prix, accelerating funding for the Cardiff City Region deal in Wales, and funding in Northern Ireland for community cohesion. And whilst today demonstrates the indisputable fiscal benefit of being part of the United Kingdom, this is and always will be secondary to the simple truth that we are bound together by more than transactional benefit. It is our collective history, our culture, and our security. We are and always will be one family, one United Kingdom.
I'm sensing some bad announcements because he hasn't brought up any big numbers yet. And it sounds he's wanting to bury something.
Whilst today's budget delivers historically high levels of public spending, its success will be measured not by the billions we spend, but by the outcomes we achieve and the difference we make to people's lives. The budgets are set, the plans are in place, the task is clear. Now we must deliver, because this isn't the government's money, it's taxpayers' money. Madam Deputy Speaker, our stronger economy allows us to fund world-class public services, the people's priority. But over the long term, the only way to pay for higher spending is economic growth. And if we want to see higher growth, we've got to tackle the problem that's been holding back this country for far too long: our uneven economic geography. As we come out of the worst economic shock we've ever seen, we've got a choice: to retrench or to invest. This government chooses to invest.
This is the 6.9 billion
in our economic
that they're investing.
infrastructure, to invest in innovation, to invest in skills, to invest in a plan for growth that builds a stronger economy for the future. That's what this budget is about, and that's what this government is about. Madam Deputy Speaker, infrastructure connects our country, drives productivity, and levels up. That's why our national infrastructure strategy invests in economic infrastructure like roads, railways, broadband and mobile, over £130 billion. To connect our towns and cities, we're investing £21 billion on roads and £46 billion on railways. Our integrated rail plan will be published soon, dramatically improving journey times between our towns and cities. And today, we're providing £5.7 billion for London-style transport settlements in Greater Manchester, the Liverpool City region, the Tees Valley, South Yorkshire, West Midlands, and the West of England. And we're helping local transport everywhere, with £2.6 billion for a long-term pipeline of over 50 local roads upgrades, over £5 billion for local roads maintenance, enough to fill 1 million more potholes a year, and funding for buses, cycling and walking, totalling more than £5 billion. The Prime Minister promised an infrastructure revolution. This budget delivers an infrastructure revolution. Madam Deputy Speaker, investment in our infrastructure is just the first step. We need to do what the people of this country have always done: invent, discover, and create the ideas and technologies that will change the world.
And pay tax.
So we will also invest more in innovation. The UK is already a world leader. With less than 1% of the world's population, we have 4 of the world's top 20 universities, 14% of the world's most impactful research, and the second most Nobel laureates. We want to go further.
And 0 of the top 20 tech firms.
We will maintain our target to increase R&D investment to £22 billion. But in order to get there and deliver on our other priorities, we'll reach the target in 26-27, spending by the end of this Parliament £20 billion a year on R&D. That's a cash increase of 50%, the fastest increase ever. And I can confirm for the House that this £20 billion is in addition to the cost of our R&D tax reliefs. Combined with those tax reliefs, total public investment in R&D is increasing from 0.7% of GDP in 2018 to 1.1% of GDP by the end of the Parliament.
Reducing tax on
How does
R&D is not
1.1%
investing in
compare
R&D.
internationally? Well, the latest available data shows an OECD average of just 0.7%. Germany investing 0.9%, France 1%, and the United States just 0.7%. This unprecedented funding will increase core science funding to £5.9 billion per year by 24-25, a cash increase of 37%. Meet the full cost of associating with Horizon Europe. Establish the new Advanced Research and Invention Agency with £800 million by 25-26, and strengthen our focus on late-stage innovation, increasing Innovate UK's annual core budget to £1 billion, double what it was at the start of this Parliament.
So many words, but very little specifics. 20 billion on what?
There's more to becoming
a lot of money.
Superpower than just what the government spends on R&D. Our ambitious net zero strategy is also an innovation strategy, investing £30 billion to create the new green industries of the future. We've just issued our second green bond, making us the third largest issuer of sovereign green bonds anywhere in the world. London last week was named the best place in the world for green finance, and on Monday, the new UK Infrastructure Bank announced its first ever investment, £107 million to support offshore wind in Teesside. And to build on this work, 1 week today, I'll be hosting global finance ministers and businesses at COP26. And Madam Deputy Speaker, innovation comes from the imagination, drive, and risk-taking of business. That's why we've launched Help to Grow to turbocharge SME productivity, started a new co-investment venture capital fund, Future Fund Breakthrough. It's why I'm announcing today we will consult on further changes to the regulatory charge cap for pension schemes, unlocking institutional investment whilst protecting savers. It's why we're introducing a new £1.4 billion Global Britain Investment Fund, supporting transformative economic activity and our world-leading sectors like life sciences. And it's why today's budget increases the British Business Bank's regional financing programmes to £1.6 billion, expanding their coverage and helping innovative businesses get access to the finance they need across the whole United Kingdom.
I'm not hearing any specifics.
Madam Deputy Speaker, a third of our Science Nobel laureates have been immigrants. Half of our fastest growing companies have a foreign-born founder. So an economy built on innovation must be open and attractive to the best and brightest minds. Thanks
but we won't let them in.
Home Secretary, today's budget confirms the eligibility criteria for our new scale-up visa, making it quicker and easier for the fast-growing businesses to bring in highly skilled individuals. And the Trade Secretary's new global talent network, launching initially in the Bay Area, Boston and Bangalore, will identify, attract and relocate the best global talent in science and tech sectors, all part of our plan to make our visa system for international talent the most competitive in the world. Madam Deputy Speaker, if we want greater private sector innovation, we need to make our research and development tax reliefs fit for purpose. The latest figures show the UK has the second highest spending on R&D tax reliefs in the OECD, yet it's not working as well as it should. UK business investment in R&D is less than half the OECD average. We've reviewed the reliefs and identified two issues we are solving today. First, the reliefs need to reflect how businesses conduct research in the modern world. So, as many companies have called for, I'm expanding the scope of the reliefs to include cloud computing and data costs. The second problem is this. Companies claimed UK tax relief on £48 billion of R&D spending. Yet UK business investment was around half of that, at just £26 billion. We are subsidising billions of pounds of R&D that isn't even happening here in the United Kingdom. That's unfair on British taxpayers, and it puts us out of step with places like Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, Singapore, Switzerland, and the USA, who have all focused their R&D tax reliefs on domestic activity. So from April 2023, we are going to do the same and incentivise greater investment here at home. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, £22 billion investment in R&D, the net zero strategy, the future fund, help to grow, more regional finance, unlocking institutional capital, a more competitive visa system, and a modernised R&D tax credits regime. Enough action to prove the hypothesis: we are making this country a science and technology superpower.
I'm sorry, I feel I'm missing something, but 22 billion without any real specific details on where exactly that's going to help innovation or tech startups.
And innovation, there is one further part of our plan for growth that is crucial: providing a world-class education to all our people. Higher skills lead to higher regional productivity, and higher productivity leads to higher wages. With 80% of the UK's 2030 workforce already in work, our future success depends not just on the schooling we give our children, but the lifelong learning we offer to adults. We've already done a lot. Our plan for jobs invested in apprenticeships, traineeships, and the Kickstart scheme, but we need to go further. Today's budget invests in the most wide-ranging skills agenda this country has seen in decades. We are increasing skills spending over the Parliament by £3.8 billion, an increase of 42%. We're expanding T-levels, building institutes of technology, rolling out the Prime Minister's Lifetime Skills Guarantee, upgrading our FE college estate, quadrupling the number of places on skills boot camps, and significantly increasing funding for apprenticeships. We are also going to tackle a tragic fact. Millions of adults in our country have numeracy skills lower than those expected of a 9-year-old. According to the leading charity, National Numeracy, this costs individuals with poor numeracy up to £1,600 a year in lost earnings. People with poor numeracy skills are more than twice as likely to be unemployed as their peers. So today, I can announce a new UK-wide numeracy programme, Multiply. With £560 million, Multiply will improve basic math skills and help to change people's lives across the whole United Kingdom.
We need to attract business and investment to the UK, not support the stuff that already is here.
Speaker,
I think we're focusing on the wrong issue
We're building our
here.
infrastructure with new roads, railways and broadband, cementing our status as a science and technology superpower, and strengthening the skills of our people, the country's greatest asset. That is a real plan for growth, and that's how this government is building a stronger economy for the British people. Madam Deputy Speaker, world-class public services are the people's priority. Investment in infrastructure, innovation and skills will create the growth that we need to pay for them. But as Conservatives, we know that government action alone won't be enough to create a stronger economy. We want this country to be the most exciting and dynamic place in the world for business. And now that we've left the EU, we have the freedom to do things differently and deliver a simpler, fairer tax system. I want to begin with one of our smallest taxes, but a tax which plays an important role in one of our preeminent industries, shipping. Now that we've left the EU, today we start reforming our tonnage tax regime to make it simpler and more competitive. And we're also making it fairer for UK taxpayers. When we were in the old EU system, ships in the tonnage tax regime were required to fly the flag of an EU state. But that doesn't make sense for an independent nation, so I can announce today that our tonnage tax will, for the first time ever, reward companies for adopting the UK merchant shipping flag, the red ensign.
I think there are much bigger taxes that they save by not doing it.
With such a proud maritime history as ours.
This is so futile.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I am sure the opposition will be delighted that red flags are still flying somewhere in this country, even if they are all at sea. Let me turn now.
Here, take this little tax benefit and give up this massive one that you are currently benefiting from for not carrying the flag.
For return flights with and between the four nations of the United Kingdom than they do when flying home from abroad. We used to have a return leg exemption for domestic flights, but were required to remove it in 2001. But today, I can announce that flights between airports in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland will, from April 2023, be subject to a new, lower rate of air passenger duty. This will help cut the cost of living, with 9 million passengers seeing their duty cut by half. It will bring people together across the United Kingdom. And because they tend to have a greater proportion of domestic passengers, it is a boost to regional airports like Aberdeen, Belfast, Inverness and Southampton. Airports are major regional employers. So to help them get through the winter, I'm also extending our support for English airports for a further 6 months. We're also making changes to reduce carbon emissions from aviation. Most emissions come from international rather than domestic aviation. So we are introducing from April 2023 a new ultra-long-haul band in air passenger duty covering flights of over 5,500 miles with an economy rate of £91. Less than 5% of passengers will pay more, but those who fly furthest will pay the most. Madam Deputy Speaker, our approach to corporate taxation
seems fair, but largely inconsequential in the grand scheme of things.
Funding public services and encouraging the investment we need for a stronger economy. At the March budget, we took the difficult but necessary decision to increase the rate of corporation tax to 25% from 2023. Still, the lowest rate in the G7 and the 5th lowest rate in the G20. Alongside, I introduced the new super deduction, the biggest business tax cut in modern British history, and extended to the end of this year the annual investment allowance at its higher level of £1 million. Now is not the time to remove tax breaks on investment, so I can confirm today that the £1 million annual investment allowance will not end in December as planned. It will be extended all the way to March 2023. I also said in March that I would review the bank surcharge within corporation tax to maintain the competitiveness of our financial services.
Yeah, 8% is harsh.
We will retain a surcharge of 3%. The overall rate for corporation tax on banks will, in 2023, increase from 27% to 28% and will remain higher than the rate paid by other companies. Small challenger banks are improving banking competition, which is good for the sector and good for consumers. So to help them, I will also raise the annual allowance to £100 million. Madam Deputy Speaker, our manifesto promised to review business rates. We're publishing our conclusions today. But before I set out our plans, let me say this. We on this side of the House are clear that reckless, unfunded promises to abolish a tax which raises £25 billion every year are completely irresponsible. It would be wrong to find £25 billion a year in extra borrowing, cuts to public services or tax rises elsewhere. So we will retain business rates, but with key reforms to ease the burden and create stronger high streets. First, we will make the business rate system fairer and timelier, with more frequent revaluations every 3 years. The new revaluation cycle will be delivered from 2023.
Process change affects nothing really.
As called for by the Federation of Small Business and the British Property Federation, we're introducing a new investment relief to encourage businesses to adopt green technologies like solar panels. And I'm announcing today that we'll accept the CBI and the British Retail Consortium's recommendation to introduce a new business rates improvement relief. From 2023, every single business will be able to make property improvements and for 12 months pay no extra business rates. That means a hotel adding extra rooms, a manufacturer expanding their factory, an office adding new air conditioning, CCTV or bike shelters will all pay no extra rates. Together
Oh,
with
how
the new
kind. For a
green
whole
investment
year,
relief,
and then
we're
after you spend all your money, you do
introducing
have to pay the
incentives
rates.
totaling
That's very kind.
£750 million. This will make a difference. But without action, millions of businesses would see their tax bills going up next year because of inflation. I want to help those businesses right now. So our third step is that next year's planned increase in the multiplier will be cancelled. That's a tax cut for businesses worth over the next 5 years £4.6 billion. And I have one final measure to help those businesses hardest hit by the pandemic. I'm announcing today, for 1 year, a new 50% business rates discount for businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors.
That's why they're going to the brewery later.
Pubs, music venues, cinemas, restaurants, hotels, theatres and gyms. Any eligible business can claim a discount on their bills of 50% up to a maximum of £110,000. That is a business tax cut worth almost £1.7 billion. Together with small business rate relief, this means that over 90% of all retail, hospitality and leisure businesses will see a discount of at least 50%. Apart from the COVID reliefs, this is the biggest single-year tax cut to business rates in over 30 years. Madam Deputy Speaker,
Because everyone wants to ditch their offices, right? You've got to keep them in there.
£7 billion. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are unleashing the dynamism and creativity of British businesses with a simpler, fairer and more competitive tax system. The biggest business tax cut in modern British history, the biggest single-year tax cut to business rates for 30 years, £1 million investment allowance, tonnage tax reformed, air passenger duty cut. That is the way to back business and build a stronger economy.
But also a 6% increase in corporation tax that we won't mention.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let me turn now to alcohol duties. First introduced in 1643
The popular tax that means nothing.
to help
Great.
pay for the Civil War. Our alcohol duty system is outdated, complex, and full of historical anomalies. The Institute of Fiscal Studies have called it, in their words, a mess. The Institute of Economic Affairs said it defies common sense. And the World Health Organization have warned that countries like the UK, which follow the EU rules, are, and I quote, unable to implement tax systems that are optimal from the perspective of public health. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, today we are taking advantage of leaving the EU to announce the most radical simplification of alcohol duties for over 140 years.
Hence the photo up at the
We
brewery
are
later.
taking 5 steps today to create a system that is simpler, fairer, and healthier. First, to radically simplify the system, we are slashing the number of main duty rates from 15 to just 6. Our new system will be designed around a common sense principle. The stronger the drink, the higher the rate. This means that some drinks, like stronger red wines, fortified wines, or high-strength white ciders, will see a small increase in their rates because they are currently undertaxed given their strength. That's the right thing to do, and it will help end the era of cheap, high-strength drinks which can harm public health and enable problem drinking.
We need the numbers.
And because this is a more rational system, the converse is also true. Many lower alcohol drinks are currently overtaxed and have been for many decades.
But hey, cheap beer!
Rosé, fruit ciders, liqueurs, lower strength beers and wines, today's changes mean that they will pay less. The second step I'm taking today will encourage small, innovative craft producers. I'm announcing proposals for a new small producer relief. This will extend the principle of small brewers relief to include, for the first time ever, small cider makers and other producers making alcoholic drinks of less than 8.5%. Third, I'm going to modernise the system to reflect the way that people drink today. Over the last decade, consumption of sparkling wines like Prosecco has doubled. English sparkling wine has increased almost tenfold. It's clear they are no longer the preserve of wealthy elites. And they are no stronger than still wines. So I'm going to end the irrational duty premium of 28% that they currently pay. Sparkling wines, wherever they are produced, will now pay the same duty as still wines of equivalent strength. And because growing conditions in the UK typically favour lower strength and sparkling wines, this means English and Welsh wines, compared with stronger imported wines, will now pay less.
He's talked twice as long about booze as the
Sales of
infrastructure
fruit
investment.
cider have increased from 1 in 1,000 ciders sold in 2005 to 1 in 4 today. But they can pay 2 or 3 times as much duty as cider that is made with apples or pears. So we are cutting the duty on them too. The fourth step I'm taking
Still on the
today
booze.
will directly support the home of British community life for centuries, our pubs.
More booze.
Even before the pandemic, pubs were struggling. Between 2000 and 2019, consumption in the on-trade fell by 40%. And many public health bodies recognise that pubs are often safer drinking environments than being at home. So, as the members for Dudley South and North West Durham will agree, a fairer, healthier system supports pubs. So I can announce today draft relief. Draft relief will apply a
Cheap
new,
beer.
lower rate of duty on draft beer and cider. It will apply to drinks served from draft containers over 40 litres. It will particularly benefit community pubs who do 75% of their trade on draft. And let me tell the House the new rate. Draft relief will cut duty by 5%.
A
That
5%
is the
cut.
biggest cut
Oh, wow.
to cider duty since 1923. The biggest cut to fruit ciders in a generation. The biggest cut to beer duty for 50 years.
I think we need 10 more minutes
This is
of
not
beer
temporary.
talk.
It's a long-term investment in British pubs of £100 million a year, and a permanent cut in the cost of a pint of 3p. And I cannot wait, Madam Deputy Speaker, for the opposition to accuse me tomorrow of beer barrel politics.
Seriously, how long can we talk about
Madam
booze?
Deputy Speaker, these much-needed reforms will come into effect in February 2023, but I want to help the hospitality industry right now. So, for my final announcement on alcohol duties today, I can confirm that the planned increase in duty on spirits like Scotch whisky, wine, cider and beer will all, from midnight tonight, be cancelled.
Let's just get drunk.
Worth £3 billion. Madam Deputy Speaker, our reforms make the alcohol duty system simpler, fairer and healthier. They help with the cost of living while tackling problem drinking. They support innovative
Making booze
entrepreneurs and
cheaper
craft
definitely
producers.
tackles
They back
problem
pubs
drinking.
and public health. And they are only possible because we've left the European Union.
We've left the EU so we can have cheap beer. Madam Deputy Speaker, More beer news?
world-class public services, investment in infrastructure, innovation and skills,
And beer.
simpler, fairer taxes to support businesses and consumers, all built on the foundation of a stronger economy and responsible public finances. That is our vision for the future, and that is what this budget delivers. And this budget also supports working families.
And beer.
Madam Deputy Speaker, with fuel prices at the highest level in 8 years, I'm not prepared to add to the squeeze on families and small businesses. So I can confirm today the planned rise in fuel duty will be cancelled.
So we can deliver more beer.
That's a saving over the next 5 years of almost £8 billion. Compared to pre-2010 plans, today's freeze means the average tank of fuel will cost around £15 less per car, £30 less for vans, £130 less for HGVs.
But given the oil prices, we are collecting a lot more duty anyway.
Rates, the average car driver will now save a total of £1,900.
Save is an interesting word given the petrol pump prices.
I can also announce today that public sector workers will see fair and affordable pay rises across the whole spending review period as we return to the normal, independent pay setting process. And I can take action to help the lowest paid as well. It was a Conservative government that introduced the national living wage in 2016. A Conservative government that, according to statistics published just yesterday, has overseen the proportion of people in low-paid work falling to its lowest level since 1997. And it is a Conservative government that is increasing the wage floor again today. The Independent Low Pay Commission brings together economists, business groups, and trades unions. The government is accepting their recommendation to increase the national living wage next year by 6.6% to £9.50 an hour. For a full-time worker, that's a pay rise worth over £1,000. It will benefit over 2 million of the lowest paid workers in the country. It's broadly consistent
I reckon wages might go up.
Increases and keeps us on track for our target of 2/3 of median earnings by 2024. And it is a major commitment to the high-wage, high-skill, high-productivity economy of the future. Madam Deputy Speaker, as we build this stronger economy, we're doing so at the end of an extraordinary 18 months. COVID wasn't just a public health challenge. It wasn't just an economic challenge. It was a moral challenge too. We had to show that we could pull together as a country, and we did. We had to put aside questions of ideology and orthodoxy to do whatever it took to care for our people and each other, and we did. There's a different kind of moral dimension to the economic challenge we face now. Last year, the state grew to be over half the size of the total economy. Taxes are rising to their highest level as a percentage of GDP since the 1950s. I don't like it, but I cannot apologise for it. It is the result of the unprecedented crisis we faced and the extraordinary action we took in response.
Okay, we have cheap beer.
But now we have a choice. Do we want to live in a country where the response to every question is what is the government going to do about it? Where every time prices rise, every time a company gets in trouble, every time some new challenge emerges, the answer is always the taxpayer must pay? Or do we choose to recognise that government has limits? Government should have limits. If this seems a controversial statement to make,
he's warming up to
then
it.
I'm all the more glad for saying it, because that means it needed saying, and it is what we believe. There is a reason we talk about the importance of family, community, and personal responsibility, not because these are an alternative to the market or the state. It's because they are more important than the market or the state. The moments that make life worth living aren't created by government, aren't announced by government, aren't granted by government.
Except cheap beer.
They come from us as people. Our choices, our sacrifices, our efforts.
Come on, just tell us.
And we believe people should keep more of the rewards of those efforts. Yes, we've taken some corrective action to fund the NHS and get our debt under control. But as we look towards the future, I want to say this simple thing to the House and the British people. My goal is to reduce taxes. By the end of this Parliament, I want taxes to be going down, not up. I want this to be a society that rewards energy, ingenuity and inventiveness. A society that rewards work.
Income tax was frozen in March. Let's see. Let's see. Go on then. Go on, tell us.
Is my mission over the remainder of this Parliament.
You going to do anything about your mission?
In today's budget takes
I guess that's a no.
First step. Madam Deputy Speaker, for many of the lowest paid in society, there is a hidden tax on work. The universal credit taper withdraws support as people work more hours. The rate
Sorry, he
is
isn't. He's just talking about universal credit.
So for every £1 someone earns, their universal credit is reduced by 63p.
They leaked this one yesterday.
Let us be in no doubt. This is a tax on work, and a high rate of tax at that. Organisations as varied as the Trades Union Congress, the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, the Resolution Foundation, the Centre for Policy Studies and the Centre for Social Justice have all said it is too high. So, to make sure work pays and help some of the lowest income families in our country keep more of their hard-earned money, I have decided to cut this rate, not by 1%, not by 2%, but by 8%.
Oh! That will help a lot of people.
This is a tax on working people, and we are cutting it from 63 to 55%. The rate originally envisaged by my right honourable friend, the member for Chingford. And because I'm also increasing the work allowances by £500, this is a tax cut next year worth over £2 billion. Nearly 2 million families will keep, on average, an extra £1,000 a year. Changes like this normally take effect at the start of the new tax year in April.
Immediate?
But we want to help people right now. So we will introduce this within weeks and no later than December the 1st.
This will help a lot of people in the winter. I mean,
Let me tell the
like,
House
I've got to say, this is good for the poorest.
A single mother of two, renting and working full-time on the national living wage, will be better off by around £1,200. A couple renting a home with their 2 children, one working full-time, the other working part-time, will be better off every single year by £1,800. This is a £2 billion tax cut for the lowest paid workers in our country. It supports working families, it helps with the cost of living, and it rewards work. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, fuel duty cut, air passenger duty cut, alcohol duty cut, the biggest cut to business rates in 30 years. Growth up, jobs up, wages up, public finances back in a better place, more investment in infrastructure, innovation and skills, a pay rise for over 2 million people and a £2 billion tax cut for the lowest paid. This budget helps with the cost of living.
Note that the entry level
to a higher wage, higher skill, higher productivity economy. This budget builds a stronger economy for the British people, and I commend it to the House.
No, he's finished now, but note that the minimum entry level of the level which you start paying income tax has not moved. And now that minimum wage essentially is going up to £9.50, that means a whole load of people are now going to be entering paying that tax. So in essence, that increase in minimum wage is an actual tax increase because more people are going to be pushed into paying that tax, so it's going to increase revenues.
Without debate, will the Chancellor of the Exchequer
Let's listen to the response.
Please move. Will they? They're all getting in the way. Will the Chancellor of the Exchequer please move it formally? The question is that pursuant to Section 5 of the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act 1968, provisional statutory effect shall be given to the following motions. Returns for disposals of UK land, etc. Motion number 19. Diverted.
It doesn't sound like we have anything constructive being talked about now. She's listing some motions that have been filed. But hopefully we're going to get a response from, I think it's Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, who's going to be giving it, because Keir Starmer is not in Parliament. He has COVID. So we'll see if they have anything interesting constructive to say, but we might not actually last if there isn't anything interesting happening. If you missed what was happening, you didn't actually end up missing very much. That's the honest truth. There's a whole lot of waffle. The biggest section, by far, the longest section, was about cutting the duties and costs of, in various different ways, directly in pubs, direct in the shops, of booze. So we're going to have cheaper beer and cheaper wine, but more expensive spirits. That's the number one thing that they spend about 25 minutes discussing, which is obviously incredibly important, and is going to completely change everything in this country, which is great. What else we got? Most of the big announcements on infrastructure spending around the country, on the family funds, etc., were already leaked and were already known, although some of them were lower. The family hub spending was 200 million instead of the 500 that was leaked. The infrastructure, I caught 5.7 billion rather than 6.9. Maybe there's just elements of it that are called something else. We shall have to wait and see. But the big announcement is going to help a lot of people. What came right at the end, which was the reduction in the taper on universal credit, going down from 63 to 55%. I think it is. Is that right? So that's going to genuinely help quite a lot of people. But I think we're about to hear from the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves.
On behalf of the opposition, the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves.
Here we go.
Thank you,
To be honest, there's
Madam
very
Deputy
little
Speaker.
to tackle here.
Families struggling with the cost of living crisis. Businesses hit by a supply chain crisis. Those who rely on our schools and our hospitals and our police. They won't recognise the world that the Chancellor is describing. They will think that he is living in a parallel universe.
Oh, she was listening to the live
Chancellor in
stream.
this budget has decided to cut taxes for banks. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, at least the bankers on short-haul flights sipping champagne will be cheering this budget today. And the arrogance, after taking £6 billion out of the pockets of some of the poorest people in this country, expecting them to cheer today for £2 billion given to compensate. In the long story of this Parliament, never has a Chancellor asked the British people to pay so much for so little. Time and again today, the Chancellor compared the investments that he is making to the last decade. But who was in charge? Who was in charge in this last
Okay,
decade?
she's not going to actually come up with any useful criticism. We're going to stop listening to
So
this, but
let's
let's
just
see.
reflect on the choices that Chancellor has made today. The highest sustained tax burden in peacetime. And who is going to pay for it? It's not international giants like Amazon. No, the Chancellor has found a tax deduction for them. It's not property speculators. They've already pocketed a stamp duty cut. And it's clearly not the banks, even though bankers' bonuses are set to reach a record high this year. Instead, the Chancellor is loading the burden on working people. A national insurance tax rise on working people. A council tax hike on working people. And no support today for working people with VAT on their gas and electricity bills.
He is right. VAT went
And
missing.
what are working people getting in return? A record NHS waiting list with no plan to clear it.
And cheap
no
beer.
way to see a GP and still having to sell their home to pay for social care. Community policing, nowhere to be seen. A court backlog leaving victims without justice.
But cheap beer?
And almost every rape going unprosecuted. A growing gap in results and opportunities between children at private and state schools. soaring number of pupils in supersized classes, and no serious plan to catch up on learning stolen by the virus. £2 billion announced today, a pale imitation of the £15 billion catch-up fund that the Prime Minister's own education czar said was needed. No wonder, Madam Deputy Speaker, that he resigned. Now, the Chancellor talks about world-class public services. Tell that to a pensioner waiting for a hip operation. Tell that to a young woman waiting to go to court to get justice. Tell that to a mum and dad waiting for their child to get the mental health support that they need. And the Chancellor says today that he's realised what a difference early years spending makes. I would just say to the Chancellor, has he ever heard of the Sure Start programme that this Tory government has cut?
You voted for it.
And why are we in this position? Why are British businesses being stifled by debt while Amazon gets tax deductions? Why are working people being asked to pay more tax and put up with worse services? Why is billions of pounds in taxpayers' money being funneled to friends and donors of the Conservative Party, while millions of families are having £20 a week taken off of them? Madam Deputy Speaker, why can't Britain do better than this? Now, the government will always blame others. It's businesses' fault. It's the EU's fault. It's the public's fault. They're global problems. The same old excuses. But the blunt reality is this.
The problem is we're having a speech but without
Working
any
people
actual
are being
specific
asked to pay
pointed
more for
criticism
less
or
for 3
suggestions.
simple reasons: economic mismanagement, an unfair tax system.
I agree with a lot
and
of what she's
wasteful
saying.
spending. Each of these problems is down to 11 years of Conservative failure. And they shake their heads, but the cuts to our public services have cut them to the bone. And while the Chancellor and Prime Minister like to pretend that they are different, this budget today will only make things worse. The solution starts with growth. The government is caught in a bind of its own making, because low growth inexorably leads to less money for our public services, unless taxes rise. And under the Conservatives, Britain has become a low-growth economy. Let's look at the last decade. The Tories have grown the economy at just 1.8% a year. If we had grown at the same rate of other advanced economies, we could have had an additional £30 billion to invest in public services without raising the
This
taxes
is the
that
big
the Tories
problem.
are
We're not
raising on working
attracting
people today.
companies to set up here. We're
And
not
let's
attracting
compare
tech.
growth
We're not
under the
attracting
last 11
innovation
years of Conservative
setups.
government to the last Labour government. Even taking into account the global financial crisis, Labour grew the economy much faster, by 2.3% a year. If the Tories matched that record, we would have £30 billion more a year to spend on public services. It could not be clearer. The Conservatives are now the party of high taxation because the Conservatives are the party of low growth. And the Office for Budget Responsibility confirmed this today, that we will be back to anemic growth. They might not like this, but the Office for Budget Responsibility said that by the end of this Parliament, the UK economy will be growing by just 1.3%, which is hardly the plan for growth that the Chancellor boasted about today, hardly a ringing endorsement of his announcements. Under the Tory decade, we have had low growth.
All right, guys, I'm not seeing any actual constructive criticism here or anything that I think I have any contribution to. If you want to watch this, you can go and watch it on BBC Parliament. You can go and watch it on the Parliament official channel, although that doesn't work very well. I'm going to knock off. There hasn't really been anything particularly constructive. None of the major big taxes are being affected. So I'm going to go and do something a bit more useful. And I'm going to go and make a couple of videos for you for later today, in case you're interested. So thank you very much for watching, for joining me. I'm sorry that there was absolutely nothing interesting in this. And I'll see you guys later.